Hello everyone, and welcome back to Altrole's Class Breakdown series. I'm Bill, admin and instructor for Altrole, and today we're going to continue our Class Breakdown series to give you a general overview of all the classes in D&D 5th edition to help you find the one you want to play. Today, let's examine the Wizard, a complex casting class who brings a lot to the table for all things magical. The powers of magic are wild and full of potential, drawing would-be wizards to study and attempt to harness this power for their own purposes. For a wizard, spellcasting is their sole goal and focus in life, often forgetting to eat and sleep if it means learning and mastering just one more spell. Once enough spells are learned, however, many wizards tend to lead eccentric lives in the pursuit of more, working as teachers, adventurers, or casters for hire, selling their magical secrets to whatever entity furthers their goals. When it comes to their role in the party, wizards are versatile spellcasters that are defined by the type of casting they specialize in, known as schools. The variety that these schools offer let the wizard focus their specialties into specific roles that can match the efficiency of other classes. A wizard's spells can make them as sneaky as a rogue, offer healing to replace the party's cleric, or do enough ranged damage to replace a fighter or ranger character. With these aspects in mind, the wizard typically fills the role of a blaster caster, emphasizing ranged spell damage, but these different schools offer plenty of other options for utility or control casting. To help summarize the wizard and clarify its role, let's go through a quick pros and cons list that I've organized into 3 main points for each. Starting with the pros, the first is that the wizard is flexible. Due to the wizard's wide variety in spell options that they can learn, if you know what you're doing, you can build the wizard to do almost anything the party needs. As such, choosing a wizard doesn't necessarily lock you into a specific role, allowing you to work with the party to remain relevant in areas where the other characters aren't as strong. The second main positive of the wizard class is that they have great damage. Through both cantrips and leveled spells, the wizard has access to some of the most damaging spells in D&D. With options like Magic Missile, Scorching Ray, Fireball, and much more, the wizard can dish out insane magic damage from range, and abilities we'll discuss later make it easier for them to recover spell slots during the adventuring day to keep the pain coming all day long. The third main positive of the wizard class is that it offers depth. While not something I've mentioned in a lot of the other class reviews that we've done, the wizard is a class that rewards those who study, improve, and master not only the class's available tools, but D&D's systems as well. The wide variety of effects that wizard spells can elicit give them tons of replay value, and the wizard is definitely a rewarding class to play as multiple times over. So with these pros in mind, we can see that the wizard is a flexible damage dealer that offers a ton of replay value. However, there are some negatives to the class that I need to bring up, the first of which being that the wizard is the most fragile class. Now, I mention a class being fragile for a lot of these reviews, but the wizard truly is the one class out of all of the other classes in D&D 5th edition that can get knocked unconscious if a goblin sneezes on them, especially at lower levels. With no armor proficiencies, low saving throws, and only a measly D6 as their hit dice, a base wizard requires a lot of work to keep alive, though there are some exceptions that we'll get into later. The second main negative of the wizard is that they're bad in melee. In part due to their fragility, the wizard is very hard to make work in a melee role for the party. Again, there are minor exceptions later that we'll analyze in more detail, but for the most part, a wizard is best when they're out of harm's way, and out of harm's way typically means out of melee range. Finally, the third major negative of the wizard class is that they're just complex. Because of how deep this class is in terms of options, it can also be very complex to learn, especially to new players. The wizard is almost immediately bombarded with an insane variety of choices through their spellbook, how they learn new spells, and the vast array of spells that are available to them. Meaning, if you don't know what you want to do with the wizard, it's very easy to get overwhelmed. Now, while this shouldn't turn you off from trying the wizard if you're a new player, just know that it's gonna be a little bit of a bumpy ride to truly learn all the things that they can do. With the overview laid out and the pros and cons analyzed, let's next review the unique class abilities that the wizard earns as they level up. Starting at level 1, the wizard gains spellcasting and the arcane recovery ability. The wizard's spellcasting is a little complex, so let's break it down in more detail. The wizard is an intelligence caster, which means that their spell attack modifier and spell save DC are both affected by their intelligence score. The wizard starts with 3 cantrips known and 2 first level spell slots. They gain higher level spell slots every odd level, gaining second level spell slots at level 3, third level slots at level 5, fourth level slots at level 7, fifth level slots at level 9, sixth level slots at level 11, seventh level slots at level 13, eighth level slots at level 15, and 9th level slots at level 17. Spent spell slots are regained upon finishing a long rest. The wizard is unique in that they have a huge spell list to choose from, but can only cast spells that are listed in their spellbook. The spellbook is a repository of wizard spells, and the wizard starts with 6 first level spells in their spellbook, and can add 2 free wizard spells to the book every time they level up. However, wizards can also find and copy wizard spells into their spellbook if they spend 2 hours and 50 gold pieces mastering the spell. Now, the spellbook only matters for leveled spells, however, as cantrips are cemented in the wizard's mind and don't need to be in the spellbook. Now, before actually casting a spell, the wizard must also prepare their spells from their spellbook. They can prepare a number of spells equal to their intelligence modifier plus their wizard level, and the spells must be a level which the wizard has spell slots for. Prepared spells can be changed after finishing a long rest through prayer and meditation. The arcane recovery ability, on the other hand, allows the wizard, upon finishing a short rest, to choose a number of spell slots with a combined level that is equal to or less than the wizard's level, rounded up, and no higher than 5th level. For example, a 4th level wizard can recover 2 levels worth of spell slots, meaning they can recover 2 first level spell slots or 1 second level spell slot. At level 2, the wizard chooses an arcane tradition. Arcane traditions, aka subclasses, focus the wizard into one of 13 different specializations. They gain new arcane tradition features at levels 6, 10, and 14. We'll discuss these traditions in more detail in a later section of the video. At level 4, the wizard gains their first ability score improvement. Ability score improvements add +2 to 1 ability score, or +1 to 2 ability scores, up to the soft cap of 20. Wizards gain 5 ability score increases as they level up, and if the DM is using the optional feats rule, you can forego an ability score improvement to take a feat instead. Jumping all the way up to level 18, the wizard gains Spell Mastery, which lets the wizard choose 1 first level and 1 second level spell in their spellbook to cast at their lowest level without expending a spell slot, so long as they have the spells prepared. The wizard can swap out these spells by spending 8 hours studying the new spells they want to use this ability with. And finally, at level 20, the wizard gains Signature Spells, which lets the wizard choose 2 third-level spells in their spellbook to be signature spells. Signature spells are always prepared, don't count against the number of prepared spells the wizard can have, and can be cast once at 3rd level without expending a spell slot once per short or long rest. With these base abilities established, we can see that the wizard doesn't gain a ton of innate class abilities, instead relying on getting new spell slots and subclass abilities to keep things interesting. However, their higher level abilities do make it easier to cast these lower level spells more frequently and without costing spell slots. Up next, let's look at the arcane traditions the wizard can choose from at level 2 to specialize their casting. As I stated before, there are 13 arcane traditions available to the wizard at level 2. Now, I'm going to go through them in alphabetical order, but as always, if you want to skip ahead to a subclass you want to know more about, you can use the timestamps in the description to skip ahead to the one that you're interested in. Bladesinging is an old elven tradition of weaving swordplay and dance together, utilizing elegant maneuvers that channel magic into an effective offense and defense. When taking this subclass, the wizard gains proficiency with light armor, one type of one-handed melee weapon, and the performance skill, as well as gaining the Bladesong ability. Bladesong allows the wizard to invoke elven magic as a bonus action for 1 minute, so long as the wizard isn't wearing medium armor, heavy armor, a shield, or wielding a two-handed weapon. Entering Bladesong grants an armor class bonus equal to the wizard's intelligence modifier, a 10 feet increase to their walking speed, advantage on acrobatics checks, and a bonus to concentration saving throws equal to the wizard's intelligence modifier. This can be used a number of times equal to the wizard's proficiency bonus, and spent uses are regained upon finishing a long rest. Further levels in this subclass grant the ability to attack twice anytime the wizard makes the attack action, the ability to expend a spell slot when damaged to reduce the damage by 5 times the spell slot's level, and eventually allows the wizard to add their intelligence modifier to the damage rolls of their melee weapon attacks while Bladesong is active. The Bladesinging Wizard is the melee-focused subclass for the wizard, offering a lot of good melee options, but still having some downsides that make it less than optimal. The Bladesinging Wizard has to become multiple ability dependent to be effective with their armor, weapons, and spells. And despite the armor class bonuses they get, the wizard is still at the mercy of having a low health pool. Overall, while a good subclass in theory, a melee-focused wizard still doesn't work very well, even with the Bladesinging subclass. Chronurgy wizards focus their magic on the manipulation of time, bending it to their will by tapping into the energy within the passing of seconds. When taking this subclass, the Chronurgy wizard can add their intelligence modifier to their initiative rolls and gains the Chronal Shift ability. With Chronal Shift, the wizard can use their reaction after making or seeing an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, and force the creature to re-roll and use the result of the second dice. This ability can be used twice and recharges upon finishing a long rest. Further levels in this subclass grant the ability to encase and incapacitate a creature within magical energy, the ability to freeze cast spells into little beads that then let the user release the spell later, and eventually grants the ability to ignore a dice roll and just decide whether a dice roll succeeds or fails at the cost of gaining exhaustion. Rather than rely on divination spells, the Chronurgy wizard utilizes class abilities to influence dice rolls in roleplay or combat, lending them a key role in affecting the main thing people do when they play D&D. Roll dice. If you want to gain the power to force the DM to have to re-roll their dice, or help that one player at your table that can never roll above an 8, the Chronurgy subclass is a great support option to choose. Graviturgy wizards focus on learning the natural energy of gravity, utilizing its awesome and destructive power to raise their allies and crush their enemies. When taking this subclass, the wizard gains the Adjust Density ability, which lets them either double or halve the weight of a creature within 30 feet, so long as they are large or smaller. While halved, the creature moves 10 feet faster and can jump twice as far as normal, but has disadvantage on strength checks and saving throws. While doubled, the creature's speed is reduced, but they gain advantage on strength checks and saving throws. Further levels in this subclass grant the ability to move creatures targeted by the wizard's spells, the ability to increase the velocity of attacks or mitigate fall damage, the ability to target huge creatures with Adjust Density, and eventually the ability to create a gravitational pull around the wizard, damaging and restricting the movement of nearby creatures. While wielding the power of gravity sounds cool on paper, the actual effectiveness of a Graviturgy wizard is limited by the situations they find themselves in, and often have their abilities able to damage allies as well as their enemies. That being said, the Graviturgy wizard can work as a pretty good subclass if you really want a wizard that can understand the gravity of the situation that they're in. The Order of Scribes wizard focuses on recording and logging magical discoveries, with their unique relationship with scrolls and books unlocking more potential from their spellbook than the other wizard subclasses. When taking this subclass, the wizard gains the Wizardly Quill and Awakened Spellbook abilities. Wizardly Quill gives the wizard the ability to create a tiny quill that creates its own ink, makes copying spells into the spellbook faster, and allows the wizard to erase anything written by the quill as a bonus action if the writing is within 5 feet of the wizard. Awakened Spellbook lets the wizard's spellbook act as a spellcasting focus, swap damage types between spells in the spellbook, and allows the wizard to cast ritual spells with the spell's regular casting time rather than waiting the traditional 10 minutes. Further levels in this subclass grant the ability to conjure the mind of the Awakened Spellbook and cast spells from the Conjuration, the ability to create one spell scroll with a first or second level spell upon finishing a long rest, the ability to create spell scrolls faster and for less cost, and eventually has their mind entwined with their spellbook, granting advantage on intelligence checks and the ability to temporarily sacrifice spells to avoid damage. The Order of Scribes wizard is a book nerd through and through, focusing on collecting and cataloging spells faster and with less cost than other wizards. While not necessarily specialized into any one specific role, the Order of Scribes still acts well as a generalist wizard that can tailor their spell selection to fit any role the party needs. Abjurers focus on protection and defense, specializing on ending harmful effects and banishing evil influences. When taking this subclass, the wizard can spend half as much gold and time copying Abjuration spells into their spellbook and gain the Arcane Ward ability. Arcane Ward states that when the wizard casts an Abjuration spell of first level or higher, they gain a magical ward that lasts until the end of their next long rest. The ward has a hit point maximum equal to double the wizard's level plus their intelligence modifier, and absorbs incoming damage until reduced to 0, which redirects any further damage to the wizard's health. Further levels in this subclass grant the wizard the ability to have their ward absorb damage against creatures within 30 feet as a reaction, the ability to add their proficiency bonus to ability checks rolled as part of Abjuration spells, and eventually gains advantage on all spell saving throws and resistance to damage from spells. The School of Abjuration is a good defensive subclass for the wizard, with their main ability giving them an additional pool of effective hit points that can help the caster survive, and a spell school that is filled with defensive options like Mage Armor, Shield, and Counterspell. If you're worried about staying alive as the wizard, the School of Abjuration offers great spells and abilities to make sure your wizard doesn't have to be babysat by another party member in combat. Conjurers focus on spells that create objects or creatures from thin air, using them to summon friendly allies or teleport long distances in the blink of an eye. When taking this subclass, the wizard can spend half as much gold and time copying Conjuration spells into their spellbook, and gain the Minor Conjuration ability. Minor Conjuration lets the wizard use their action to conjure an inanimate object that radiates dim light that lasts for up to an hour. Later levels in this subclass grant the wizard the ability to teleport up to 30 feet away to an empty space, the ability to swap places with a small or medium creature within 30 feet with this teleport, the ability to never have their concentration broken by damage, and eventually has any creature summoned or created through Conjuration start with 30 temporary hit points. The School of Conjuration is a control and utility subclass, with abilities that allow for stronger spellcasting and more mobility, as well as a spell pool that contains control, damage, and summoning spells. If you want to play a wizard that can elegantly move around the battlefield while their magical summons aid the party in battle, the School of Conjuration would be the choice for you. Diviners work within the veils of space and time to reflect on the past, illuminate the present, and foresee the future. When taking this subclass, the wizard can spend half as much gold and time copying divination spells into their spellbook and gain the Portent ability. With the Portent ability, when the wizard finishes a long rest, they roll 2 d20s and record the numbers rolled. These numbers can be used to replace any attack roll, ability check, or saving throw made by the wizard or another creature they can see once per turn. Further levels in this subclass grant the ability to regain lower-level spell slots when casting divination spells, the ability to choose between Dark Vision, Ethereal Sight, Comprehension of all languages, or seeing invisible creatures after finishing a rest, and eventually, the ability to roll 3 portent dice instead of 2. The School of Divination is another utility subclass, but one focused on having dice rolls be predetermined while supported by a spell pool that makes it easier to detect enemies and their weaknesses. The School of Divination is a very fun subclass, but know that if you're going to play one, you should have a quick chat with your DM so that they can prepare for your character's foresight within the game world. Enchanters focus on charming and beguiling others, often against their will, to aid their goals as best as possible. When taking this subclass, the wizard can spend half as much gold and time copying enchantment spells into their spellbook and gain the Hypnotic Gaze ability. Hypnotic Gaze states the wizard may use their action to force a wisdom saving throw on a creature within 5 feet, charming them, dropping their speed to 0, and rendering them dazed and confused until the end of the wizard's next turn if they fail. The wizard can use their actions on subsequent turns to renew this effect, but it ends if the wizard moves more than 5 feet away, if the creature can no longer see or hear the wizard, or if the creature takes damage. Further levels in this subclass grant the ability to divert attacks to other targets near the attacker, the ability to have leveled spells that target one creature, target 2 creatures instead, and eventually, the ability to not only have creatures not realize they were charmed by the wizard, but the ability to remove hours of its memories while charmed if it fails an intelligence saving throw. The School of Enchantment is an interesting and somehow morally dubious subclass. However, there are still quite a lot of creatures that are resistant or immune to charm effects. If the enchanter runs into one, they become almost useless with most of their abilities and spell choices. Other than that though, the School of Enchantment can still be a very fun subclass choice with a lot of flexibility for player roleplay within situations where charm is being used effectively. Evokers harness their magic into the elemental forces of heat, cold, thunder, acid, and more, serving as pseudo-artillery mages that blast enemies from afar. When taking this subclass, the wizard can spend half as much gold and time copying evocation spells into their spellbook and gain the Sculpt Spells ability. Sculpt Spells allows the wizard to create pockets of safety within evocation spells, choosing a number of creatures equal to 1 plus the spell's level to automatically succeed on the spell's saving throw and take no damage if they would normally take half damage on a success. Further levels in this subclass grant the wizard partial cantrip damage onto enemies that succeed a cantrip saving throw, the ability to add their intelligence modifier to any one damage roll of an evocation spell, and eventually the ability to automatically deal maximum damage on 1st through 5th level spells, though repeated uses before long resting will hit the wizard with necrotic damage as a sort of backblast. Where other wizards attempt to charm or teleport or foresee the future, the Evoker simply says, "I don't care if my allies are in range, I cast Fireball." The School of Evocation is a simple, damage-focused subclass that's great for new players, but still offers enough depth for experienced players to get a lot of enjoyment. If you want a wizard that's focused on dealing elemental damage, you can't do much better than the School of Evocation. Illusionists work with magic that dazzles the senses and boggles the mind, making the most impossible of circumstances feel as real as anything else that we face in our lives. When taking this subclass, the wizard can spend half as much gold and time copying illusion spells into their spellbook and gain the Improved Minor Illusion ability. Improved Minor Illusion grants the wizard the Minor Illusion cantrip, or another cantrip if this is already known, and allows the wizard to create both a sound and an image with a single casting of the cantrip. Later levels in this subclass grant the wizard the ability to change illusions that last longer than a minute, the ability to create a duplicate illusion to soak up 1 attack per rest, and eventually the ability to make an inanimate object from an illusion real for 1 minute. The School of Illusion is a utility-focused subclass that is insanely complex and flexible. Illusion spells and abilities are only limited by what players can create and what the DM permits, which can be a ton of fun assuming that everyone is willing to work with the wizard's antics. While I wouldn't caution new players away from this subclass, learning more about the game and its mechanics first can help a lot in mastering the School of Illusion wizard. Necromancers focus on manipulating the forces of life, death, and undeath to study and master the energy within all living things. When taking this subclass, the wizard can spend half as much gold and time copying necromancy spells into their spellbook and gain the Grim Harvest ability. Grim Harvest states that when the wizard kills 1 or more creatures with a 1st level spell or higher, they regain hit points equal to twice the spell's level, or 3 times the spell's level if it was a necromancy spell. This benefit cannot be gained against undead or constructs, and can only be used once per turn. Further levels in this subclass grant a better version of the Animate Dead spell with more, stronger undead, the ability to resist necrotic damage and any attempts to lower the wizard's maximum hit points, and eventually gains the ability to convert any undead within range to be under the wizard's control. The School of Necromancy is similar to Conjuration in its ability to summon monsters to fight for the wizard, but differs in that what's being summoned is more of the monster mash variety. Early Necromancer abilities reward aggressive damage casting as a Necromancer, but later levels are where the summoning powers tend to kick in, making the School of Necromancy a fun and varied subclass option so long as you don't have any morally uptight paladins in the party. Transmuters focus on the magical modification of energy and matter, acting as agents of change in a world that can be molded a million different ways. When taking this subclass, the wizard can spend half as much gold and time copying transmutation spells into their spellbook and gain the Minor Alchemy ability. Minor Alchemy allows the wizard to change an object from wood, stone, iron, copper, or silver to another one of these listed materials for up to 1 hour unless the wizard loses concentration, in which case the material reverts back. Further levels in this subclass grant the ability to create a transmuter stone that imbues 1 of 4 buffs to the holder, the ability to polymorph into a beast with a challenge rating of 1 or lower for free once per rest, and eventually the ability to consume a created transmuter stone to transmute an object, fully heal and remove all debilitations from a creature, cast Raise Dead on a creature, or reduce a creature's apparent age. The School of Transmutation is in a weird spot for the wizard's subclasses, as the abilities and spells gained at early levels can be very underwhelming and situational at best. However, a high-level transmuter who can take full advantage of transmuter's stones and all their varied abilities can find a good amount of variety and fun in this subclass. If I had to rank them, I would say the School of Transmutation is my least favorite subclass, but I would still recommend people to try it out for themselves before writing it off completely. War mages blend Evocation and Abjuration magic to gain the benefits of both offense and defense, seeing magic as both weapon and shield. When taking this subclass, the wizard can add their intelligence modifier to initiative rolls and gain the Arcane Deflection ability. Arcane Deflection states that when the wizard gets hit by an attack or fails a saving throw, they can use their reaction to add +2 to their armor class or +4 to a saving throw, but cannot cast spells other than cantrips until the end of their next turn. Further levels in this subclass grant the wizard the ability to store the power from counterspells and dispel magic to deal extra force damage on offensive wizard spells, a +2 to armor class and all saving throws while concentrating on a spell, and eventually a buff to Arcane Deflection that allows the wizard to deal force damage to up to 3 nearby creatures when Arcane Deflection is used. War magic wizards are largely defensive in nature, with their offensive options coming at later levels or with the base wizard spells. However, considering how fragile wizards normally are, this is a welcome change, and this subclass helps more offensive wizards withstand attacks from enemies and eventually reflect that damage back onto them. If you want to play a relatively tanky wizard that still packs a punch, the War Magic subclass would be a good choice for you. With all the class and subclass abilities explained, let's now look at how to build a wizard character if you want to try one for yourself. Despite wizards being great as backline damage dealers, the diversity in arcane traditions really allows them to take up a variety of roles, which is something we'll need to think about when creating the character. For this example, I'm just going to build a traditional level 1 backline blaster caster, focusing on dealing single target and area of effect damage through spells, with a couple utility options just in case. For ability scores, the wizard's highest ability score should be Intelligence, to boost up their spell attack modifier, spell save DC, and prepared spells. Their second highest ability score should be Constitution, to beef up their meager hit point pool as well as their concentration saving throws. There is an argument to be made for also increasing Dexterity to be the second or third highest ability score, but you should only really do this if you plan on being a Bladesinger wizard. The rest of the ability scores can be spread out as you see fit based on what you have available. Health is up next, and as simple as always. To determine the wizard's starting health, take 6 and add your Constitution modifier to it. After health is equipment, which does offer some variety, but won't be super necessary since we're focusing on spellcasting. For my wizard, I would want to take a quarterstaff, a good backup weapon in early levels if I need to defend myself in melee, an arcane focus, which I can hold in one hand to cast spells without worrying about material components, an explorer's pack, which has more useful equipment for adventuring like a bedroll, torches, and rations, and finally, a spellbook, a mandatory addition to any wizard's arsenal if you want to cast spells. With equipment done and dusted, let's take a look at the level 1 abilities a wizard needs to know. At level 1, the wizard gains spellcasting and arcane recovery. Arcane recovery is easy, so let's do that one first. When noting down this ability, we'd want to note that we can only do this once per day upon finishing a short rest. The spell slots recovered have to add up to half our wizard level rounded up or less, which at level 1 is just going to be 1 level 1 spell slot, and we cannot recover spell slots of 6th level or higher. With those noted, spellcasting is next. Now for spellcasting, let's get our modifiers down first and then dive into the spells themselves. For the examples we'll go through, let's assume our intelligence modifier at level 1 is +3. My spell attack modifier is just my proficiency bonus plus my intelligence modifier, and my spell save DC is 8 plus my proficiency bonus plus my intelligence modifier. So, with an intelligence modifier of +3 and a proficiency bonus of +2, my level 1 spell attack modifier would be +5, and my spell save DC would be 13. Now that we've got those listed, let's look at spells. At level 1, I know 3 cantrips, have 6 first level spells in my spellbook, and have 2 first level spell slots. However, I need to prepare the spells in my spellbook before I can cast them, which is limited by my intelligence modifier plus my wizard level. At level 1, with a +3 intelligence modifier, this means I can prepare 4 first level wizard spells from my spellbook. Now, I'd want to go over to the wizard spell list and choose 3 cantrips to know and 6 first level spells to have in my spellbook. As a blaster caster who wants some roleplay utility, I'd take the Firebolt, Light, and Poison Spray cantrips, as well as the Ice Knife, Mage Armor, Magic Missile, Shield, Sleep, and Witch Bolt spells. Out of these 6 spells, I need to prepare 4 of them. With my spells prepared in my spellbook, I'm now done with spellcasting. Remember that wizards can change their prepared spells upon finishing a long rest, so you can always swap things out if what you chose isn't working for you. And with all the ability scores, equipment, and level 1 abilities laid out, we have a level 1 wizard ready to go. And that is everything you need to know about the wizard class in D&D. A fragile backline caster that has some of the most powerful spell options in the game, you can still be surprised at how versatile the wizard can be in the party and should never really be underestimated. Now, normally I shun casters because I'm a fighter main through and through, but I think I might make an exception for the wizard. I think their sheer spellcasting power more than makes up for their lacking health pool. But what do you all think? Is the wizard's power worth being knocked unconscious by a stiff breeze? Or are they just too fragile and complicated to be worth learning? Let me know in the comments below, or join us over on the Altrole Discord, which is linked in the description, to discuss it with the community. While you're there, feel free to say hi and check out our live courses that we run every week for free that cover any and everything you could possibly need to know to play D&D. If you want to help support the server and this channel, you can also check out our Ko-fi page in the description. We'll also be hosting another poll to vote on which class you all want to see broken down next in the Discord, so head over there before the poll closes this Sunday. Our last poll determined that the next class breakdown is going to be on the Sorcerer class, so boot up yeoldancestry.com to find the source of our magical bloodline next week. But that is everything I had for you. Thank you all so much for your time today. I would like to note that we are nearing the end of the class breakdown series as we churn through all the different classes. So if you have ideas on new content you'd like to see Altrole produce that helps you learn more about D&D, let us know either here in the comments or over on the Discord so we can start getting some stuff prepped for you. I appreciate all of you who support us here, and we've got plenty more in store for you in the future. So make sure to have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see all of you next time.